Have you ever looked at someone you loved with your whole heart, while secretly wondering if they were destroying your life behind your back? I did. For nearly 3 months, I smiled across the dinner table from the woman I planned to marry, while every night I went to bed knowing another man had been in our apartment. She thought she was living 2 separate lives. What she never realized was that I was quietly planning the day I'd erase myself from hers forever. Before we dive into today's unbelievable revenge story, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe if you love stories where karma takes its time, but never misses. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, or watched someone get exactly what they deserved, tell us about it in the comments below. Now, let's get into today's story. People always say, you know when you've met the one. Looking back, I think that's one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves. Because when I met Emily during my final year of college, I believed every single cliché. She walked into a friend's party with a smile that could light up an entire room. She was confident without being arrogant, funny without trying too hard, and somehow made everyone around her feel important. The strange part? She made me feel seen. I'd never been the loudest guy in the room. I was quiet, focused on building a future in finance, more comfortable listening than talking. Somehow, that never bothered her. That first night, we talked until sunrise. One conversation became daily texts. Daily texts became weekend dates. Before I knew it, we were inseparable. Our friends joked that we'd skipped the dating stage and gone straight to being an old married couple. Honestly, they weren't wrong. Over the next few years, life felt almost unfairly perfect. We traveled whenever we could. Weekend hiking trips turned into overseas vacations. Family dinners became traditions. Her mother welcomed me like I was already part of the family, while her father, reserved with everyone, gradually warmed up enough to shake my hand with something resembling approval. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just imagining a future. I could actually see it. A house. Children running through the backyard. Growing old beside the same woman who still reached for my hand every time we crossed the street. So one autumn evening, I got down on one knee. She cried, she laughed, then she said yes. I still remember sliding the ring onto her finger and thinking, this is the happiest day of my life. I had no idea it was actually the beginning of the worst chapter I'd ever lived through. At first, the changes were so small, they barely registered. She'd come home from work unusually quiet. Instead of curling up beside me on the couch, she'd stare at her phone. Some evenings, she'd disappear into another room for just a minute. Those minutes became hours. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd smile. I'm just tired. I wanted to believe her. Love has a strange way of convincing you that doubt is the real enemy. So I ignored the little warning signs, the missing eye contact, the distracted conversations, the moments where she seemed physically present, but emotionally somewhere else. Then Thanksgiving arrived. We drove to her parents' house expecting another warm family weekend. Instead, I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. Emily barely looked at me during dinner. Even her mother noticed. She quietly pulled Emily aside, and from across the hallway, I could hear muffled voices growing louder. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. Something had changed, and whatever it wasn't going away. That drive home from Thanksgiving was painfully quiet. Emily stared out the passenger window almost the entire trip. Every now and then I'd glance over, hoping she'd finally tell me what was wrong. Instead, she'd force a small smile and say she was just exhausted. Deep down, I knew that wasn't the truth. Over the next few weeks, the distance between us became impossible to ignore. She started working later, several nights a week. Our conversations became shorter. Whenever her phone buzzed, she'd instinctively flip it face down before looking at the screen. It wasn't one big moment that broke my trust. It was 1,000 tiny moments, tiny lies, tiny excuses, tiny pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve. Finally, one evening, I gently asked her if there was someone at work making her uncomfortable. She hesitated, just for a second. Then she admitted a coworker had been trying to get close to her. She quickly unlocked her phone and handed it to me. "See," she said, "I've got nothing to hide." At first glance, everything looked harmless. Friendly conversations, work jokes, nothing inappropriate. But something didn't make sense. The message history had strange gaps, as if entire conversations had disappeared. I didn't accuse her. I simply nodded, handed the phone back, and smiled. Inside, something had already cracked. A week later, she attended her company's holiday party. Originally, we were supposed to go together. Instead, I was stuck at home with one of the worst cases of food poisoning I'd ever experienced. She kissed my forehead before leaving. "Get some rest," she whispered. "I'll see you in the morning." I watched her walk out the door, still believing I was the luckiest man alive. Hours later, curled up on the bathroom floor between waves of nausea, I opened the location-sharing app on my phone, mostly to reassure myself. Restaurant, company party, a downtown bar. Everything looked exactly like she'd told me. Then, her location stopped moving. A luxury hotel. I stared at the screen. Maybe someone was being dropped off. Maybe there was an after-party. Maybe there was a perfectly reasonable explanation. I kept inventing excuses for someone who wasn't even there to ask for them. Morning came. She finally walked through the apartment door just before noon. She looked tired, but not in the way someone looks after a long night with coworkers. She smiled, kissed me, and asked how I was feeling. Then she casually described the evening: dinner, the party, the bar. Finally, she claimed she'd stayed at a girlfriend's apartment because it was safer than driving home. I nodded. I didn't argue. I didn't mention the hotel. That single lie hurt more than anything else, because lies don't just hide the truth. They destroy trust. From that day forward, I stopped trying to convince myself everything was fine. Instead, I started paying attention. The late nights became more frequent. Her affection became more rehearsed. Some weekends, she seemed completely present. Other days, it felt like I was living with a stranger who only remembered to love me when it was convenient. The hardest part wasn't the suspicion. It was pretending everything was normal. We still ate dinner together, still laughed with friends, still talked about wedding plans. She discussed flower arrangements, while I silently wondered whether she was already building a future with someone else. One evening, I called her mother, not to accuse Emily, just to ask if she'd noticed anything unusual. There was a long pause before she answered. Then she quietly admitted she'd felt something was wrong ever since Thanksgiving. She'd noticed the emotional distance, the hesitation, the guilt in her daughter's eyes. Hearing someone else confirm my fears was strangely comforting and completely heartbreaking. A few days later, life handed me an unexpected opportunity. My company asked me to oversee a major project in another state for several weeks. It came with better pay and the possibility of a promotion. Emily looked genuinely excited. At first, I thought she was proud of me. Looking back, I think she was simply excited to have the apartment to herself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation we'd ever had, every promise, every plan, every dream we'd built together. Finally, just before sunrise, I made a decision I never imagined I'd have to make. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. Arguments only create more lies. If I wanted the truth, I needed proof. The following weekend, I quietly installed several discreet security cameras inside the apartment while she was out shopping. Not because I wanted to spy on the woman I loved, but because I desperately hoped they would prove I was wrong. I wanted to wake up one day feeling embarrassed for ever doubting her. Instead, those cameras captured something that changed my life forever. The first notification appeared while I was sitting alone in a hotel room hundreds of miles away. I clicked it without thinking. Within seconds, my entire future collapsed. The woman I'd planned to marry wasn't alone, and in that moment, I realized the hardest part wasn't discovering the truth. It was accepting that the person I loved no longer existed. All that remained was deciding what to do next. I wish I could tell you I slammed my laptop shut, that I called her immediately, that I demanded answers. I didn't. I just sat there in my hotel room, staring at the screen. I don't even remember how long. Minutes, maybe hours. When someone breaks your heart, it doesn't always happen with shouting or tears. Sometimes, everything simply goes silent. That weekend, I came home as if nothing had happened. Emily greeted me with a hug, asking how my trip had gone. I smiled. We had dinner together. We laughed with friends that evening. To everyone else, we looked like the perfect engaged couple. Inside, I felt completely hollow. Over the following weeks, every business trip brought another notification from the apartment cameras. Every notification confirmed what I already knew. She wasn't making a mistake. She was making a choice. Again, and again, and again. The hardest part wasn't watching my future disappear. It was realizing that every weekend, she'd look me in the eyes and tell me she loved me. Those words slowly lost all meaning. I gave her every opportunity to come clean. I planned romantic weekends, surprised her with dinners, talked about our future. One evening, after a few glasses of wine, tears rolled down her face. For one hopeful second, I thought, this is it. She's finally going to tell me everything. I gently took her hand. Whatever it is, I whispered, we can face it together. She squeezed my fingers. I love you, she said through tears. That was all. Not the truth, not an apology. Just 3 words that now felt painfully empty. That night, I finally accepted reality. I wasn't fighting for our relationship anymore. I was mourning it. Instead of planning a wedding, I began planning my exit. Every step was carefully thought out. I accepted a new position in another state, found a new apartment, transferred my finances, closed our joint accounts after separating every dollar that belonged to each of us. I made sure every legal detail was handled properly. Then came the final piece. Months earlier, I'd booked an expensive vacation for the 2 of us. A week before departure, I told Emily that work had created a conflict and encouraged her to take a friend instead. She didn't seem disappointed. That hurt more than I expected. The morning I drove her to the airport, she kissed me goodbye and promised she'd miss me. I watched her disappear through security. Then I whispered to myself, no, you won't. The moment I left the airport, my new life began. I returned to the apartment and packed everything. Not just my belongings, hers too. Every photograph, every sweater, every book, every tiny reminder of the future we'd once imagined together. As I folded her clothes into boxes, I couldn't stop crying. Those weren't just possessions. They were pieces of a life that would never exist. By the time the moving truck left, the apartment was empty. The lease was ending. My phone number was canceled. My email accounts were closed. My social media disappeared. It was as if I'd vanished overnight. Before leaving the state, I drove hundreds of miles to her mother's home. She welcomed me with a hug, but I immediately realized something was wrong. She had been crying. Through a heartbreaking conversation, we discovered that her own husband had been hiding an affair for months. 2 families, 2 betrayals, 1 painful truth. Quietly, I handed her the folder containing everything I'd gathered. She looked through a few pages before closing it. Tears filled her eyes. I'm so sorry, she whispered. For a long time, neither of us spoke. We simply sat there, grieving the people we thought we knew. That conversation gave both of us something unexpected. Closure. Before I left, she promised me one thing. No matter what happens, she said, she'll never know where you've gone. And she kept that promise. A few days later, Emily returned from vacation. Only, home no longer existed. My phone had been disconnected. The apartment belonged to new tenants. Every account was closed. Every trace of me was gone. Confused and panicked, she called everyone she could think of. Eventually, she reached her mother. That's when she learned the truth. I knew about the affair. I'd moved away. The engagement was over. There would be no wedding, no explanation, no second chance, just consequences. According to her mother, she spent days crying and took time off work. But by then, none of it mattered to me anymore. Months later, I settled into my new city. New job, new apartment, new friends. Most importantly, a new beginning. People often ask what revenge feels like. They imagine it's about watching someone suffer. Honestly, it isn't. Real revenge is waking up one morning and realizing their choices no longer control your happiness. The greatest victory wasn't making her regret losing me. It was finally giving myself permission to stop looking back. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes it doesn't happen in a courtroom. Sometimes justice is quietly closing a door, locking it behind you, and never handing the other person the key again. If this story kept you hooked until the very end, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more unforgettable Reddit revenge stories every week. And now we want to hear from you. If you discovered someone had been living a double life, would you confront them immediately? Or would you quietly disappear like this storyteller did? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, remember, the best revenge isn't always getting even. Sometimes, it's living a life they can never be part of again.